Hey, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. This is my friend Aaron Utecht, and we have been holed up in this hotel room talking about the Sermon on the Mount for the better part of the day, and it's been really fun. This is what we do by distance because we live far apart, and we're both into this stuff. So we call each other and we process, and some life stuff comes up in there as well. But really, we talk about this a bunch, and I hope you've enjoyed being a part of the conversations as well. If you haven't caught any of these, it'll make a lot more sense if you go back and get the videos that came before it. You can find it through you're smart, you know how to internet. But right now, we are covering the Sermon on the Mount. We're in chapter 6, kind of getting into the home stretch of Jesus' ideas here. Is this overwhelming to you, the stuff that he's saying? How does it strike you just as a human?
You can keep it from being overwhelming if you keep it in the theoretical realm.
No, what do you mean theoretical?
If you think of it as, oh, this is what the kingdom is like, is kind of an abstract...
like understanding a philosophy.
You can understanding a philosophy. Yeah.
Okay.
Like
Sure.
you say, oh, this is how this kingdom works. When you really start, like our previous video was the Lord's Prayer and how that is like we're swearing loyalty to the king and not my will. Well, when you start thinking of daily, how many times I think that I want or desire things that really are not compatible with what God wants and desires, you start to think, I'm not very good at this. And again, as we've said over and over, it all kind of bounces you back to 5:3, poor in spirit. The way that you participate,
Which is, blessed are the poor in spirit.
blessed are the poor in spirit,
For
theirs is the kingdom of heaven. The way that you enter this kingdom is understanding you'll never get there on your own. You'll never be good enough. And so the king says, I've been good enough for you. You have to come to me as a beggar. You can't come to me with any notion of credit or currency or any merits. But if you come to me as a beggar, spiritually poor, rather than spiritually bragging, then that's how you enter. And so it constantly, it does get overwhelming if you really think about what it's asking us, how it's asking us to live.
I feel like there is this this line graph that is happening with this one phenomenon as you go through the Sermon on the Mount, as you progress through it. I feel like there's an increase in the intonation of the idea that Jesus is saying, like this environment you just walked into, this situation that you find yourself in, you don't got this, but stick with me. Like the instruction, and it really crescendos in chapter 7, like the instruction is that the answer to all of this stuff is, like you were saying, it's depend on Jesus. It's hang out with Jesus, be close to him. Like he can handle the weird stuff, he knows what to do. And that the more, even if it looks religious externally, that we take a stab at doing that on our own, the further we get from being poor in spirit and actually getting this right. Can we submit that this is hard, though? Not just on the level of, man, it'd be hard to obey all these things, but it's hard on the level of our minds are Greek. Like, that's where we got our logic skills from. It's how we think about government and reasoning and all of this stuff.
I think I got my logic skills from Greek peasants and not Aristotle, but...
Okay, that's, yeah, well, I'm probably in the same zip code as you on that. But
that's our train of thinking, that's what you meant.
But this Jewish stuff is harder.
Yeah.
Jesus, for people who are watching this and feeling like, man, how could you even sort through that? Like, I don't know, that guy seems credible, but even still, like, how can you make sense of what Jesus is saying? It feels like it moves in the rhythm and a thought pattern that isn't like ours. And I guess I feel like it's just okay to acknowledge that to each other and to everybody. It does move in a different rhythm.
So it's interesting you talk about the rhythm of it. I have spent some time trying to memorize different passages of the New Testament, some Old Testament as well.
Cool.
And I find Jesus' teachings, and I think this means I'm a terrible person.
Maybe.
Well, I am anyway, but this maybe proves it. I have found the rhythm of these passages much more difficult to memorize. I don't know why. It doesn't stick with me in the same way that like Paul's letters or Old Testament Psalms or different things.
I memorized a whole bunch of Bible verses once to earn Jesus bucks at a camp. so that I could bid on getting to eat a box social dinner with a girl on whom I had a crush. Memorized all the verses. I made them give me more verses to memorize so that I would be absolutely undefeatable in my pursuit of this girl named Amber. Got time for me to bid on her. Her box came up last, and I got a little folded up triangle note that I opened up. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. So the lunch lady, who had a little bit of a beard, she was nice enough to go in and real quick make me a box lunch. And that lady's a saint. What a nice woman. She saw my little heart just crumbling and breaking. So most of the Bible verses that I've memorized have been in pursuit of a girl named Amber in probably 9th grade who wasn't into it. But I can tell you this. I've had a similar experience. I feel like Paul's stuff sticks in my brain, and I can always remember what should come next.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly
because
not.
I feel like it's what should come next.
Yeah.
With Jesus, I remember these. I remember the phrases. They're like 1 or 2 sentences at a time. The rain falls on the righteous, the unrighteous, and the little things we talked about in the first video that everybody knows, like sheep or wolf in sheep's clothing and
pearls
things
before
like that.
swine.
Yeah,
don't judge others.
Those really tight little truisms and word pictures stick.
Yeah.
So whatever the case,
let me be clear. I'm not saying that I was super successful. I said I've worked at it.
No, whatever. Yeah. You're awesome, and you're not even trying to impress a girl. So I get it. Like you're pretty good at Christianity. I'm not attractive. Nope, I understand how it all is. So we get to 19, and Jesus strikes at stuff with this teaching. Like the thing that basically is the competing currency with kingdom currency is stuff. If you don't think there's a God and you think that things just end when you die, I don't know, get yours while you can, right? That's not that dumb. That makes perfect sense to me. But Jesus says, don't store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and, this reads different than my other one, where moths and vermin destroy, excuse me, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Is that as overt as it seems?
I think so. It's pretty... All right, let's let the rubber meet the road here. And what you've been with me here, you've been listening, and he's probably spoke this. What we're getting is a condensed version in this sermon, right? This would have been a much longer teaching. If you read this out loud, how long would it take? 10, 12 minutes? 15?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Not that long. So there was probably in a much expanded teaching, here. All right, so you've been listening with me for a while here now. Let me describe to you what this kingdom looks like, and if you want to be a part of it, you need to see that what you value shows if you're really a part of it or not. Okay? And so he says, don't do it this way. Don't store up things that are just of this earth. Store up things that are in heaven. Store up, and so how do you do that? That's a natural question.
Right.
But I think an implication is you probably can't do both. You probably can't pursue this kingdom and this worldly.
Yeah.
And that's the tricky thing is, how much is enough or how much is too much?
Walk on the right side of the road, you're okay. Walk on the left side of the road, you're okay. You walk down the middle, squish like grape.
Swish like grape.
Yeah, and for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You can't serve two masters. Either you'll hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't serve both God and stuff, money. But it's stuff, right? Isn't that the gist in the original language?
Yes, that's you just quoted from Luke's version, right?
Is that it? Stuff? Yeah, let's go with that.
Well,
mammon.
Mammon is the term there, but that's material possessions. Yeah. But that's Luke's version is a little longer than Matthew's, but yes.
So how much stuff?
Oh, that's the question, isn't it?
How much is okay?
There's no rule. I'm not gonna supply a rule.
Well, then how can you know if you're getting it? Like, how how can you know if you're getting it right?
How can you know? So I would think of it as it's not a matter of arrival, but a matter of direction and pursuit. So if in my pursuit of the kingdom, if I put a mark on it, then I'm under the illusion that I'm actually arrived and I'm there, and I'm never in Christian language, I'm never fully sanctified. I'm never really arrived at the spiritual place that God wants me. So should I continue to live on less and less money? Well, maybe for somebody that'll be the thing. Maybe it isn't a matter of living with less, but learning to value it less and less. When we put rules on it, and then, well, this is acceptable and this isn't, then we get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And we all think, well, the amazing thing about rules is that everybody defines them just to the other side of us.
Yeah. Yeah, I designed a disc golf course.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I did a pretty good job. I mean, we went and got money and resources and all of this, and my friends came out, we did it, we set the whole thing up, and I've got an all right arm. I mean, you've seen me throw it around a little bit, like maybe not a beast, but I can chuck it. And so we went out there and kind of measured off, like, well, I know a couple people who can throw maybe a few feet further than me, but I think like if I just get a good one out there, we'd want to go like that, plus a little more distance, plus a putt. And that'd be a good par 3. So I designed the whole course that way. It's a pretty long course. I don't know what happened, but I just had some kind of shoulder pain during the off season that year after I put it in. And the next year I came out and I'd lost about 20% off my drive. It's like, this course doesn't seem, it's not fair. Like, this is dumb. So I'd set it like just right at the appropriate edge of what works.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the details changed, the measurement changed, and I couldn't meet the standards anymore. So
interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I have firsthand experience in ruining disc golf for an entire community. That illustrates your point. Somehow that illustrates the point.
Yeah, I mean, you know, anybody that has rules, they all set themselves in the in category, not the out category. That's the nature of it. So when you set a rule, we think of, well, this is what it means to arrive, and I've arrived. I'm achieved what I'm supposed to achieve here, and so, you know. He uses, I'm jumping ahead down here to seek his kingdom. And that's in the next little section here.
Well, I think
so it's a matter of
really
seeking.
Part of the same.
Yeah, it is
section.
part of the same sequence. Yeah, it's a matter of seeking.
Yeah,
not imagining that I've arrived. And so if I'm constantly seeking, I'm constantly evaluating. Do I need this purchase? And I would say if somebody owns a lot of stuff, nice stuff, it isn't even a matter of owning it as a problem. Do you use it for kingdom? Can you put it to work for kingdom purposes?
Yeah. Okay, and I think, again, we keep jumping back and forth between Matthew and Luke a lot, but there's that parable of the shrewd manager over in Luke that I think is making exactly that point.
Yes.
Like, convert your here stuff currency into kingdom currency.
Yes.
So you got resources now, and they are useful. They have value in this system. They let you move around, they let you accomplish stuff. Jesus' challenge isn't necessarily to purge all of it, though he does push one dude who comes and asks. You know, he pushes that guy who comes and asks to purge all his stuff.
Which is instructive, because at least one person, that was the thing that they needed.
Yeah, they needed nothing.
And other people may not need to get rid of it all, but they need to, you know. Yeah. So the isn't a one
We're talking
size.
about the rich young ruler in Matthew 19.
Yeah.
But that principle of, again, not a hard, fast rule where you just tick a box. I earn under $55,000 a year, so I am honoring God. You earn $55,500 a year. You sicken me. You don't love God. Nobody can make that much money and love God. You shave a couple $100 off it, and you're great.
Yeah.
Like, of course that's nonsense.
Yeah.
The call on this is harder than that. If I'm reading this right, what Jesus is calling us to is to reimagine everything about everything involving life and stuff and relationships and time and resources and loyalty and the invisible stuff about our lives in light of this kingdom manifesto and these kingdom values. This is what matters. This is what's important. This is what's going to last. That's where I want your heart. And that's going to have implications in all of these other external manifestations, ranging from morality to religious behavior to what you think about your stuff to how you treat people. And of all of those, the stuff strikes the closest to home for most of us, I think.
Most of us in this country, for sure, because we have the most to lose. We in the West, especially in America, are the wealthiest society in the history of ever. We have a higher standard of living than most kings throughout human history. To live the way we live for most of human history would have taken an army of slaves. And some of that's technology.
Yeah, but we invented magic.
Yeah.
Lightning magic and heat magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Car magic. We can, travel down the road on a
Little
combustion
black
engine.
box knowledge magic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so some of that's
So
technology.
we're very, yes.
So and I'm not, cell phone over there charging. I have it. We do it. That isn't necessarily the problem. But you say, well, why? That seems to strike most for most of us the hardest, and I think it's because we have the most to lose. Somebody in another context in Latin America or someplace.
No problem.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Embrace the poverty. Cool.
Yeah, cool. All right.
You think that's why, okay. Do you think that's why Christianity is absolutely crushing it in impoverished parts of the world? Or do you think that it's crushing it there because people don't have money to afford education? When people become more educated, they become more skeptical and more enlightened.
Well, I don't think the latter. And why they're embracing Christianity in areas of the world that are much more poor than we are. That's probably a complicated. You can't just give a one size.
All right. Yeah. No, I threw a punch. You ducked it. You didn't duck it. You parried it properly.
I would say the idea to say, well, when you become well educated, you'll let that behind. Western civilization has been extremely well educated and has been thoroughly Christian from basically 100 AD on.
Yeah.
And
it's only a recent phenomenon.
It's only
the
recent phenomenon that being highly educated now separates you from. So the idea that once you become educated, well, let's be honest, most of Western civilization has been overtly and intentionally Christian, and they were the ones that started the scientific revolution and the Renaissance and all those things.
And major reform movements.
Major reform movements. Yeah.
Okay.
So that,
but,
yeah.
Fair enough. Parried. Fair enough. But the theme of stuff in the sayings of Jesus in all the Gospels is very pronounced.
Super pronounced.
By number, I went and added it up myself, so I could be wrong, but this is how I counted it. I went through all 4 Gospels and I just tallied. What did Jesus talk about? Did this a few years ago. Number 1 topic is his Father. If you count Father and Father's kingdom together, that's number 2, or that can go together as number 1. Number 2 thing that he talked about is stuff.
Material possessions.
That was it. Money, stuff, possessions, and what it does to you. So there's a very pronounced warning. I don't see anything other than the rich young ruler situation where Jesus says don't have stuff. But I do see warning after warning, like it's at your peril. Like this is a hurdle you have to overcome.
And that's the key there. It's the warning. That it isn't, it's, if you want the kingdom, this is going to compete with it. It isn't, I don't want you to enjoy things. It isn't, I want everybody to go be a monk and,
Though some people like that response.
Some people like that, and and some people have done really well, and
via securiori, way more secure to heaven. Get rid of all your stuff.
Yeah,
Go be a monk.
So, but it's couched in terms of a warning.
Yeah.
That this is going to compete, and if you want this life in the future, this is going to compete with you now.
Based on the frequency of Jesus talking about it, it is almost as though stuff is the opposite of the kingdom, not naughtiness is the opposite of the kingdom.
Well, now there's a paradigm.
But I think we think of naughtiness as the opposite of the kingdom. Substance abuse, the swears, like the really hard ones. The swears, voting the wrong way, you know, not taking the right stance on social issues, morality. That's the opposite of following Jesus. But by sheer number, the competing ideology is stuff worship. I say in a
there are
room
other things that
surrounded
compete.
by cameras and lights.
You're putting it to use for kingdom purposes.
You're making me feel good.
Yeah.
So one last question. It's the obvious question. I don't think it's too tough. Clearly, people would be listening to this and they'd be like, all right, I want to follow you, but it does get cold. If I don't have stuff, I would be naked. And that would really like hurt my skin and I'd probably die. I want to follow you. I get super hungry. So I'm definitely going to want to eat things so as to not die. Jesus' response to that comes at the end of chapter 6.
Yep.
You know, take a run at just summarizing how he anticipates the question and addresses it.
Yep, that's a really good segue. So don't be anxious about your life. God knows these things, and He's going to provide. He's going to take care of you. And this goes back to give us this day our daily bread.
I agree. Yep.
And He says, you know, this whole thing is a faith thing, and you're going to have to trust me. And that means you're, you know, trusting is, if you're going to trust in me, it's hard to trust me when you have a bank account or a barn full of grain or whatever, you know, the illustration in our day. It's harder to trust me. And what I want this thing to be about is you learning to trust me and that I am good. And that's going to get harder if you've got all this stuff.
I think it's so weird. I know this isn't where you're going, but man, you get into that. I mean, it's just a slight twisting of that language that gets us into televangelists.
Oh, yeah.
Like, well, you got to learn to trust the Lord. I always have a southern accent when I imitate televangelists. Is what it is. You got to learn to trust the Lord, brother. And the way to trust the Lord is to exhaust yourself of things and give them to me that I might have a Gulfstream jet. And only when you have exhausted yourself of resources and I have a Gulfstream jet will you experience the true blessings of the Lord. And I pray, Heavenly Father, that you will unleash those blessings on these people who've given so generously to my Gulfstream jet fund at this time.
Like you've seen this someplace.
I've seen it somewhere. Drives me crazy.
I think
it is very easy to take this teaching, twist it 2 degrees, and exploit decent, good people who want to believe, maybe aren't super rooted in what the Bible actually says, and then they get cheated and twisted, and you create a faith time bomb that is going to go off because you took something that is almost reflective of what Jesus said and used it to leverage and guilt people into doing
so how does that happen? I mean, that's the question.
Does religious lying happen?
Well, I mean, how does that person take that, teach, and then say, well, you know, and give it to me, send it to our ministry, you know.
Oh, my goodness.
If you go back, your kingdom come, your will be done. That person has inserted themselves between the giver and God.
You need a Gulfstream. And you read about these faith healers that I'm bringing in like millions on millions of dollars from people that they're fake healing. I don't know. It's a rabbit trail. It makes me angry. The point is, we get to the home stretch, and the promise here is, like, look, God takes care of other stuff that isn't out trying to chase down its own needs. Like, your Heavenly Father is real, and again, I feel like it's a call to theism. Practically speaking, if you live for stuff that says that you don't think that there's actually a God.
It's a sign of distrust.
You don't even think there is one.
Yeah.
That's more what I think it communicates.
Well, it communicates that. You may believe he's there, but you're not.
So whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think there's 2 sides of this do not worry ending to chapter 6. Side number 1 is just that. Don't worry. Don't worry. There's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger thing going on. Easy to say when you're clothed and fed. But at the same time, I think there's a secondary layer, which is like actually believe. And, well, stuff and loving stuff does make you actually believe, just not in God. And so it's another one of these places where it feels like the antithesis of what Jesus is saying is subtle atheism, while still doing things that sound vaguely religious. We went too long. Let's wrap it up so we can get to chapter 7.
I was just checking out.
Oh, did I burn through all the time? I did.
No.
I'm going to look into that camera.
Well, one of them.
I'm going to say I got Chatty Chatterton on this one. These two are still working. So we got chapter 7, a couple more videos to go on this thing. This is going well. Thank you, buddy.